The program today is on 4 simple steps that improve health and reduce health issues, and 5 reasons why they work. The motivation behind this video is that when I was 50 years old, 10 years ago, in 2010, a doctor told me that my kidney function was down to 50%, and when it reached 30%, I will need to have dialysis where a machine would clean my blood. He also told me I was very diabetic. This is how I looked at 50. You can easily see the poor muscle tone and fat around my midsection. So in the last 10 years, I sought to understand what works when it comes to health. So the question is, now that I'm 60, how did things change? Today at 60, my health issues have been reversed, as I will show in lab test results from a month ago at the end of this presentation. And physically, this is how I look, with better muscle tone and better shape altogether. So the goal for this video is simply to share what have worked for me if others might benefit from it. These 4 steps that I have used is actually what differentiates 2 groups of animals and also applies to human beings. All you have to do is look at the muscles, belly size, and agility or speed on the group of animals on your left and compare them to those on your right. What differentiates between 2 sets of animals is simply where these 4 steps come from. How long does it take for these steps to work for a person where they can change their body from one set of animal look to another? An example of that is a young man who early in 2020, almost a year ago, looked like that in February, and 2 months later, after he tried for 2 months, ended up looking this way. But the changes are not only physical. There has been over 50 people who have used to actually reverse diabetes type 2 and reduce their high blood pressures within 2 months. So before we get to the 4 points, what I would like to discuss is 5 points that eventually will show the basic and scientific reasons why these 4 steps should work. We will start first with what affects a human health. And there are 3 things that actually affect in grouping. The first is there's impact or wounding, where a person will suffer from symptoms of swelling or tearing and bleeding from wounds or broken bones. Usually, the person could heal within 1 hour from the bruising if they are iced to 2 months from breaks and wounds. The second set of issues that affect health is either germs or parasites, whether they are bacteria or virus, or parasites like worms or malaria parasite. And the symptoms could be combination of fever, coughing, diarrhea, vomiting, or rash. If this doesn't kill you, usually a person heals within 2 months. But the problem is the third group of health issues, and they are chronic sicknesses that last lifetime if not reversed. There are treatments given, but they do not solve the problems. And these include heart problems, cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, rheumatism, and etc. Before the onset of these diseases, however, there are indicators that tell you you might be at risk. And those indicators, the harbinger two of them, is carrying a lot of fat or being obese. And this fatness is caused usually the consumption of certain foods, almost 9%, 90% of the time, or lifestyle, whether it is sedentary and behavior. The second point we will discuss is understanding the human body. It's made 60% of water, and the majority of all the good parts are made from combination of several amino acids or proteins, almost 30% of the remaining parts of the body, whether it is the muscles, ligament, bones, and hair and nails. The hormones in the body, such as testosterone, insulin, and growth hormones, or enzymes that control the functioning of the body, even antibodies that fight diseases, including also is cholesterol, which has long been vilified wrongly and is made in the liver on the basis of what the body needs. It's made of 50% amino acid and 50% fat. And it's extremely critical for life because every cell in your body's membrane is made of cholesterol. So the third thing in your body, which is almost 5% or less, is the combination of minerals and vitamins, which most of the time your body recycles instead of losing it. The fourth thing a body is made of is unburned or unused fuel that is transformed to fat. And it can be 5% of the body weight if somebody is very lean, to up to 80% if somebody is obese. And as we pointed out, this is an indicator of health issues coming your way. The third item that we will discuss is what we eat. All food are basically made by plants through photosynthesis, and animals eat that plant, and all the good nutrition from the plants are actually in higher concentration in animals. So therefore, a person needs water and amino acids and minerals and vitamins. These two are highly concentrated in animal flesh, whether it is fish or other animals, and in eggs, and also even in bones when it's boiled to broth. The fourth thing a person might consume is a fiber. This actually is highly concentrated in leaves. It's something the body does not absorb, but it's critical for keeping a person regular in making easy movement of their bowels. The last and the fifth type of food a person consumes is something that becomes fuel. That is food, when digested, mostly becomes glucose in the blood. And these are three grouping: all the grains and all the products made of it, all the fruits, and milk. Because basically the majority of its content is high complex sugars such as sucrose and fructose and lactose. So when these foods are digested, these three types of sugars are broken down into simple sugar called glucose that easily go in one's blood. That glucose in the blood, because somebody is very active or has high metabolism, burns it. And then therefore that person easily gets rid of it, and that person stays very thin. It's like filling the tank of a taxi in the morning, and by nighttime that tank is empty. And people who only consume this type of food and are active and burn, they look like these groups of pictures you see on the left. However, if some person is sedentary or has low metabolism or gets older and does not burn the fuel they consumed, and they consume it in large quantity, then that food is converted into fat, and the person looks like the pictures you see on the right, which tells you that the people who consume mostly the food that become glucose either burn it and they are quite skinny, or they turn it into fat and end up being overweight and obese. It never leads to somebody that looks like that, as the picture number 3 shows. The fourth item we will discuss is, therefore, the fifth group of food that we said becomes fuel. And when that fuel is made into fat, how the body organs and the health of the person is affected. So when all these types of food become glucose in the blood, as we said, your pancreas produces a lot of insulin that tries to move the glucose out of the blood, first into the cells, and when the cells are saturated, the rest of that glucose is moved into the liver. The liver, unfortunately, becomes storage for food that you did not need, and then it has a second job, which is it becomes a laboratory that chemically changes the glucose into fat. a very hard work and it taxes the liver. The liver also overworks and becomes also affected, where a person, instead of having the type of liver shown on the left, they may end up having fatty liver. The next thing that happens is all this fat you deposited into your body actually needs nutrition, and the heart is the pump that sends all the food and oxygen needed to all the cells, which means every pound of extra fat you have deposited requires miles of blood vessels to pump more blood. And you can easily see how more tasks your heart becomes. Stress and pressures follow. The next thing also is that weight you're carrying affects your joints. Eventually, your body becomes resistant to the functioning of the insulin, and the insulin becomes ineffective, and the blood sugar cannot be reduced. And then a person is told to have type 2 diabetes. Yet, the blood needs to be cleaned. Unfortunately, when the insulin is ineffective, your kidneys take the responsibility of trying to clean the glucose out of the blood. In some parts of the world, it's called actually, instead of diabetes, it's called sweet urine. Your kidneys have to pull the sugar with a lot of fluid, water. And in this case, excessive urination takes place. But that urination also makes everything dry, whether it's your blood, your body, and it's very hard to actually push the blood to your toes and extremities. And with that dryness, people who have diabetes can easily be seen to have very dry, rough skin. Some of them actually end up with blindness or blood not reaching their feet and the feet dying, as you can see, and a lot of people with their toes being cut and eventually their legs amputated. Another problem with glucose is that it is actually the fuel that cancer cells need, and it speeds up the growth of the cancer. So starving the cancer could take place if a person reduces the amount of glucose that is available to them. So let's go to the last and fifth item before we discuss the four steps. And this is related to two hormones that the body produces, and they do actually opposing things. One is human growth hormones, and the other one is cortisol. Human growth hormones actually helps build a lot of muscles and reduce fat and help make bones more dense. It also decreases anxiety and depression and increases stamina, whether it's sexual or when exercising. It also increases a key type of cholesterol called HDL, which is the good cholesterol. And the higher of that there is, the lower the cholesterol risk to the person. To get a lot of human growth hormones, it was found out that the longer a person stays hungry, the higher the production of growth hormones. Because when somebody takes any calories in, the body shuts down the production of human growth hormones and starts producing insulin. So a person will alternate between the two. So therefore, to have higher growth hormones, one has to stay hungry for a longer time. Also, intense exercises and heavy lifting also help produce that. On the other hand, cortisol is produced by stress and tiredness, and it actually performs opposite to what the human growth hormones do. For instance, it actually breaks muscles into glucose, and people who are stressed, tired, especially those who are diabetic, will see their sugar all over the place, although they have eaten nothing. And it's because the increase of cortisol increases the glucose in the blood by destroying their muscles. Another thing that one could see is long distance runners who go through a lot of stress end up with very small muscles, whereas people who do fast, short runs are very muscular, as these two pictures show. The one on the left, a short distance speed runner, whereas the one on the right is a long distance runner. People who run marathons, actually, when they finish the marathon, if their blood is tested, it has similar indicators for somebody who had a heart attack. It should be pointed out, though, that cortisol is needed in small amounts. It is actually what helps you wake up in the morning. But at larger quantity, it is referred to as death hormone. Let's go back to the human growth hormone. What it does is it rejuvenates and repairs the body. How? It destroys old cells and radicals and actually forms new young cells. By helping destroy all the old cells in the body and the radicals, actually you can easily see it could and be a way of preventing the formation of cancer cells. This way of destroying old cells and radicals in the body and building new cells is called autophagy because the body is self-eating. And it was a research that won a Nobel Prize in 2016 by a Japanese doctor. Because these hormones are really amazing, it is these days produced artificially, and it costs $4,000 to $5,000 a month. An example of a person who has taken is this doctor who looked this way when he was 68 years old, and 10 years later, he looks like that. You could either spend all that money and use the artificial one, or you could go hungry and go through intense exercise and actually let your body produce more and more and become better. So let's go then to the four steps that we talked about, which is four aspects that differentiate between a lion and a cow. What are the difference? The first one is a lion actually stays hungry most of the day and eats once a day, hence higher growth hormones available in its body, whereas a cow keeps eating all day long. The second thing is a lot of rest. Lions are less worried about being attacked, except for certain situations, and they also do not move that much, whereas a cow is anxious and moves a lot and therefore higher cortisol levels. The lion consumes meat, which has, as we pointed out, higher concentration of all the amino acids the body needs and all the vitamins and minerals compared to what's available in plants which the cow eats. And unfortunately, plants, certain type, has higher glucose. The fourth and last thing that differentiates a lion from a cow is when a lion actually runs, it runs short, quick distance at high speed, especially when it's chasing its prey. Whereas a cow moves all day long slowly. Therefore, in the past 10 years, the first thing I have done is to stay hungry between 18 to 20 hours a day. In other words, all I do simply is not eat breakfast, just take water and black coffee or tea, no calories in the morning. My first meal is at 2 p.m. and my last meal is 6 p.m. Sometimes I may even eat a little bit earlier at noon, but my last meal always at 6 p.m. so that I go to bed after I have digested the food and there's no acid reflux. Hunger is not the problem, lack of water is, and I drink a lot of water. An example of that is this young man from Philippines who actually fasted for 28 days but kept drinking water. What you can see how he changed this and he lost 32 kilos is simply because all that 32 was a lot of calories, glucose that has been formed to fat in his body. And during that 28 days, he let his body actually use the food that's already stored as fat in his body. There's another example of this young lady who only ate once a day for 28 days, and you can see how she has dropped all the fat. Now, the second thing is I try to get good sleep and I avoid conflicts and negative people. I eat food that has high concentration of amino acids, minerals, and vitamins, and those are eggs and all kind of flesh. But I eat them with leafy greens, oil, and lime. That is my 2 meals every day. And these are pictures of those meals, as you can see on the right. The last and fourth thing I do is intense exercise for 20 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. So what kind of exercise do I do? What I try to do is short 20 to 30 seconds, no longer, very fast activity or heavy lifting, and then I rest to exactly the same amount of time, 20 to 30 seconds, short periods of resting and exercise. And I alternate between those two until 20 to 30 minutes have passed. The key goal is increase your breathing as high as possible, or in other words, also increase your heartbeat to reach above 150 beats per minute. And some of the exercises I do are shown in these pictures, either running as fast as I can in the same spot, doing burpees, jumping up and down, or doing push-ups. Let's move on to the results. And we will start with whole day measurement of my heartbeat. As you can see, my resting heartbeat is 48, one of the best numbers one could actually have, because people in my age, the average and best numbers resting is 72, 80. And when I exercise, I have been, during the December 11th Friday, able to raise my heartbeat to 166. Let's move now to the metabolic analysis. All the numbers here are in normal range, but I would like you to focus first on glucose in this blue box. Now it's the normal range. The other is my creatinine level used to be high, and now the numbers are within range, showing the performance of my kidneys are now normal. Both the potential onset in diabetes and kidney problems have been reversed. The next thing I like to point out is cholesterol level. Unfortunately, here we see that the numbers are a little bit higher in these two boxes, whether it is the overall cholesterol or the LDL, which some people refer to as the bad cholesterol. But the key thing is cholesterol is very important to human life, but it has risk associated with it. And those risks are when you have low HDL or the good cholesterol. And a ratio of the total cholesterol divided by the HDL is needed to be less than 5. Your risk is high if it's more than 5. And the other risk becomes higher if you have inflammation or high blood pressure. So let's look at these 3 risks. First, we're going to go through my good cholesterol, the HDL, which I put the second box from the top in blue. And you can see my value is 69. And one is suggested to have more than 40. It's almost twice as much. But what does that mean? If you divide my total cholesterol by the HDL, my number is 3.5, which is way less than the 5 that is a reflection of risk. So my HDL puts me in less risk, as you can see from these numbers. Now let's move to inflammation. This shows measurements of indicators of inflammation. And as you can see, all the numbers are at the lower range of what's acceptable, showing less likely inflammation in my body. Let's go to the third one, which is high blood pressure. And as you can see, my blood pressure measurements are 118/70, normal, good range. However, the high total cholesterol is good for the production of certain hormones. And one key one is testosterone. So I had the testosterone level measured, and it is 649 for a range of normal that is 250 to 827. That is at the top 1/3. My doctor sent this comment, and he tells me that the testosterone level I have is better than most young men. So why is testosterone important? A baseline testosterone level is a predictive of metabolic syndrome. If you have it higher level, there's improvement in your insulin sensitivity and glycemic control in men with type 2 diabetes. Thank you very much.